Welcome back to another week. Let's discuss with Meg Duke, where we talk some things perinatal and all things mental health. This week, I have with me the love of my life. We're just going to jump right in. Laura Browning is here. Laura!
Hello! Everybody gets to listen to basically what we do all day, which is chat about moms and parenthood.
That's exactly right. I'm very excited for it. We were just talking. I think we could have like a 6-part series.
And that would just be sharing all the videos we share where we felt seen.
Yes, absolutely. Laura, I love it because I don't get to ask this question very often because I often slide into the strangers' DMs. How do we know each other?
Oh my goodness, that's a really difficult question to answer, but obviously we know each other which doesn't even feel like the real reason anymore. I used to work with your husband,
Yes.
which we're still in the same industry, obviously. And I think we met at a New Year's Eve party at my house in like
2012.
2012. Yeah.
12
So
into 13.
end of 13. Yeah. And so obviously we met when you moved to Dallas, and now you're my son's godparents. So we've really come a long way from you being the girlfriend of a friend of mine from work, but I'm glad. Very, very glad.
It's pretty funny though to like look back at those pictures that we were like just acting as though we were already best Judies in some of the pictures, like with champagne toast and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I might never see that girl again, but she was fun. Yes. Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I know I've already talked to you. I know you listened to my show. Thank you. So I already did a really brief intro to holiday stress, and that was before Thanksgiving. And you'll recall my daughter was homesick, and so I was like, blah, 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 trying to power through it. And then she woke up, so I just was like, okay, this is as much as we can get. So I'm excited because you actually asked if I would come to your, now explain the group, because I'm not going to do it justice. Explain the group of what you asked me to come do.
So I'll try to make it very brief. So I'm a co-chair of an employee resource group for my company, Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, shout out. And our group was basically theorized during COVID, when a lot of us, my coworkers and I, were #default caregiving, right? At home, because our children of all ages. My son is the same age as your son, and he was born right at the start of COVID. And then we had everything, through school age people trying to homeschool. And we realized that we needed a support group for parents, and not just women, although, a big percentage of our group is women, because we are a lot of time the default caregivers. So if daycare calls, who's dropping everything to go, right? It's mom a lot of the time. So we were trying to build a place where we could feel supported, and it has grown into, we call it Cheers, which is what we call most of our ERGs at work. Caregivers Can, CAN, Collaborate, Advocate Network. And it's all about people who are either parenting littles or working with their, maybe they're taking care of their elderly parents. It just covers really the full spectrum of life. And the resources that you need to be successful just independently, and also how does that work in an environment where you're a working caregiver? So you also have a day job, and obviously our home job is our number one, but you got to figure out how to be supported through it all. And so that's really what the group is. And we do quarterly events we invite the company as a whole, so not just everybody that's a member. And our event last month, where you were our guest speaker, was our Navigating Holiday Stress event, because we got a lot of feedback on what topics people wanted to see covered. That, finances are a really big stressor, how you create holiday magic, but also this is what we affectionately call O&D in our business. It's the busiest time of year for retail, hands down. And so we have a lot going on. And then, the week of Thanksgiving and 2 weeks in December, your kids are home from school, and you got to figure out how you're going to make them feel special and seen and attended to, but maybe you're not able to take time off of work because it's the season that we're in. So how people could navigate that and still not feel just like they're having to give 100, everything they have to make everybody else happy. We talk about this a lot too. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that
I'm living.
Modeling the behavior, right? You want your kid, you want the magic for your family, but you don't want to be burned out, because that's not a great modeling behavior either. So how do you balance?
Absolutely. Yes. And it was such a pleasure. And obviously for those who are like, I don't know who Laura is, like Laura and I wake up in the morning texting, we go to bed texting, we text today. Even Austin will be like, wow, you all really text a lot. He's on text threads with us. Like it's, we have lots of text threads, but it is the kind of thing that we've been talking about. And so we actually got the opportunity to sit and specifically work on presentations together with another friend, Jennifer Lawrence, who are a co-worker of yours, also now another text thread that we have. They just keep growing. I love it. It's nice that the text threads have been very helpful for me to feel very supported, especially when I moved to Kansas in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic. And just sometimes to feel, like you said, to feel seen, like, hey, does anybody else have this problem? Hands go up, right? Like, I'm not alone. I'm not doing it wrong. We're all there. And so it was really a beautiful space to be able to sit together, come up with this presentation with Jennifer, and be able to present it and have some stuff that people really were able to take away that were helpful. And in my first episode, I've had people DM or text me, friends text, people who don't know me DM, and be like, I've never heard of O&D, but I have my own O&D in my industry, or like, we don't call it that, but like, it really, that does ramp up for us. Or I am a stay-at-home parent, but O&D is really hard for me too, because I take care of my kids and the magic and all of that. And so I was like, yeah, we're just making O&D like a global thing outside of the wine industry.
Really is. I'm sure lots of other, you know, you get towards your fiscal close, or anybody that's working on a quarter, it's just, it's probably not exclusive to us, although we've affectionately had that term for a long time.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And so, that's why I think, you know, wanting to talk about, with the stressful times of year, whether some people, O&D is like, oh no, everything starts to really cool down then, and in the beginning of the, you know, whatever it might be. But even still, those of us who celebrate holidays, and so, you know, in the United States, obviously, November, the last week-ish or so was Thanksgiving. A lot of us travel for family or take off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You know, for me, if I'm not working, I don't get paid, right? So I don't have PTO. I don't get, you know, my husband, bless him, always takes off that week between, even before we had kids, Christmas and New Year, mustache man day for us. I'm sure we'll get there. And I am having that same thought of like, I am going to be at work. He's going to have both the kids downstairs. I've done that a million times. How much does he travel for work? And yet I still have this feeling. Even yesterday, my daughter was homesick, and he ended up just taking a PTO day because she is, God bless her, she's almost 18 months. And my son will put on a movie, we'll give him an activity. We can go run and do something, come back, check on him, give him some food, whatever. My daughter, that is not the case. And so I sat here working, seeing clients all day and being like, I feel so guilty that my husband had to take a day of PTO and he can't work. And I'm like, you've been doing that since October when they're sick.
Yes, absolutely. But it's that default caregiver mentality, where we feel like we also, if I may, feel like if we don't handle something, it won't get handled in the right way, and we need to let that go.
That is correct. So that we've talked about that before. I'd like to actually maybe just do a whole episode on gatekeeping, because it's like when we find ourselves feeling stressed because we're not getting help. And I'm not just talking about you and me, but I know
but we are
both of our heads right now. We know this is us. We find ourselves feeling stressed because we're not getting the help that we feel like we need. And also we have historically been like, that's not good enough. That's not correct. I'll just do it myself. And so then either people stop trying, or whatever it might be, in that gatekeeping kind of way. And I think I was at a training a couple of months ago when I heard the expression used that way of gatekeeping. And I thought, that's exactly what I've been doing. And not so much as the kids get older, but especially in the beginning when they're younger and everything feels so fragile and breakable, and like, no, but you're not doing it right. I'll just do it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a little bit of that makes us feel like that attachment. We don't want to let go of it because it's a special thing that we do. And there's a little, it's glass and plastic balls, spoiler alert, right? But there are things that other people can take and the kids are going to be just fine. And there are things that we want to do for them that are special with us, and you don't want to let those go. And it's trying to figure out, where can I get help? Like, hello, I need it. And it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so the communication piece is where we were going to go next, to talking about, you know, family boundaries, work boundaries, particularly in the O&D of the wine and spirits industry, of course, but all of us in general. A lot of people have really strong work stressors, 365, not just in this time. And how do we communicate with the family, like, I have to be at this thing at this time? How do we communicate to our boss? I love the example that we keep using is like the kids' Christmas play, right? Like, how can I rearrange my schedule in a way, like, I'll see this person another time later in the day. I'll sacrifice my evening with the family so I can be there at noon at school, or whatever that might look like. But yeah, it's kind of like, how do we express those healthy boundaries and set expectations is that first piece.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we're going to get there again, spoiler alert, but the quiet quitting example you use for that, it's like, be vocal about, okay, so next Monday at 8:30 in the morning, we're having breakfast with Santa at my son's daycare because that's something that they offer. So we're doing it because he's just now, he'll be 3 this month. So he's just now kind of understanding Christmas and some of that. Sure. And so, yeah, being able to block it off in your calendar and not hide it. I'm like, on my calendar, if you look at my Outlook, everybody has access to it. It says breakfast with Santa. So like, you won't find me for 30 minutes and that's where I'm going to be. And I'm not going to feel bad about it because you get one shot at this age. You know, this is even if it'll be as special the next couple of years, you only get each of these moments one time, right? So you got to figure out what you're not willing to let go. And then just stand strong.
You know, and I will say, I want to acknowledge, first of all, that's so exciting. Our kiddos are doing pictures with Santa next Friday. So I'm very excited because I'm looking at the Shutterfly plaque that you helped my husband create with the photos of them from last year that sits right in front of my desk. And very excited, hoping that we get a good result again this year. Who knows? But I do want to also acknowledge the privilege that we do have. You know, I have my own business. You are senior vice president in charge of the world of no one really knows. I'm obviously obsessed
Semantics.
with but yeah, and so there is a privilege that comes to being more advanced in your career, being able to say, and I'm very aware that there might be people listening who are fresh out of wherever, you know, fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, right in your first job, and it's like, oh, you want me to go tell my boss what? So I do want to acknowledge the privilege that we're from whence we speak. And also, again, we might as well, I'm okay with jumping around because no one can see your PowerPoint slides or anything.
Exactly.
But that quiet quitting piece is, you know, the example, again, what we talked about. So with Breakfast with Santa, if you feel like you can't talk to your boss and you're not missing Breakfast with Santa, then you're putting something else on your calendar. I'm seeing Joe at the fresh market, and really you're not. And then the concern, so that's the kind of the quiet quitting piece of, I'm just not doing things and not articulating them. And also the stress that has to go with it, right? Like, what if somebody that you work with sees a post on Instagram or whatever it might be? And I don't have the answer for everybody, right? I don't have the answer because some people's situations are so deeply different. But it is just trying to have that communication as much as you can, try to have the expectations and kind of lined out and being intentional about that. For sure.
And, you know, I think that's important too, right? So that's one of the things we talk about in our ERG is we never want to limit the scope to just people that are in the same like division that we are, because it's not even about the position, it's about the division and the responsibilities.
Oh my gosh.
And to your point there, you know, you don't work, you don't get paid. So how, you know, what a luxury to just be able to take 30 minutes off, right? No, that's not everybody's reality. So, you know, I love when we talk about quiet quitting and the stress that it puts on you because you're worried about being found out or whatever. You know, first thing obviously is the communication and the level setting of expectations. If you have a reasonable supervisor or somebody that you feel like you can talk to and say, look, this is really important to me. Is there some way that I can make it up, to your point? And I think the other thing is being open enough and vulnerable enough to the people, like building out we always call it, you know, it's our village, is our ERG, because you need each other. Let's say it's the children's play. And we always use that example of the thing that I'm not willing to give up. But what if that's not realistic? Our child's Rudolph performance is next Wednesday at 10 a.m. My husband leads a meeting at work at 9:30. There's absolutely no way he can be there in person. Yeah. So I fortunately can, and I'm going to record it. But what if neither of us could be? Could we reach out to a parent? Could we reach out to a teacher? Could we find, you know, hey, will this be recorded? Can it be on Facebook? Whatever. We kind of going back to the gatekeeping, right? Looking for ways that you can ask for help and not being afraid to. I know a lot of us don't like that. It's a very vulnerable place to be. And it's an emotional time of year. The holidays, just everything, it feels so much bigger and more the magic. If they don't do it this specific way, the magic won't be there. And it's like, no, I mean, however you get it done is perfection.
Yes.
And not getting it done sometimes is also perfection.
Also perfection. I'm going to write that down. Not getting it done is also perfection sometimes. Yes. And I think we're ramping right into my favorite quote of 2022. And perhaps I like, how can I get this cutely put into a tattoo? the Jim Quick of it all. So
Yep.
on the days you only have 40% and you give 40%, you gave 100%. And I remember when I first saw that, I immediately texted you because I feel like we are high achieving individuals, pre-children. We expect a lot of ourselves. We expect a lot of other people around us. And so, but mostly of ourselves. And so there are times where it's like, I don't have any more in the tank. And I'm upset with myself because I don't have 100%. And it's like, right, but I'm giving my all and I'm doing the best I can with the resources that I have available. And I think that is a learned process of saying like 40% is 100%, and that's okay.
Right. We talk a lot about not being able to pour from an empty cup and how do you recharge your batteries or refill your tank, but sometimes that's not realistic, and that's what you got. You got this much, and it's all you can give. And to your point, giving it is still giving of 100% of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it has to be those things of talking about, like, where can I make magic? And everybody's is so different. And this is a tough one, right? So we talk about, what are the things that are the most important? What are, like, this has to be done, fine. What are some of the things that you can say, like, okay, I'm going to let that go and not find myself being overburdened? So instead of, previous years, I made individualized, cookies with everyone's picture on them or whatever. And like this year, you know what, like, I'm going to do something different, and that's going to be okay. What are some of the things that you can do? Can you ask somebody to help? We talked about transitioning of hosting responsibility and the pressure that comes with the change for some of our people who, in our group, who are taking care of their older parents, loved ones, guardians, or whatever, and the stress that can come with that as well can be very, very difficult. And so, kind of managing expectations. I think I keep trying to not jump into it because I know it's ahead, but I'm just like, I'm going to stop trying to follow the flow of the presentation and talking about the balls, right? So
right. I think the ball, and I obviously, we haven't got to talk about this yet, but I have the survey results of our post-event survey, and the balls were a very solid, tangible takeaway for a lot of people. So I think that is an important metaphor, and it's something that we can really kind of resonate with and harken back to if you need, an internal mantra to get yourself through the madness of the holidays.
Yes. So first of all, chills. I love that was so well received. It's some of these like crystallizing moments for me in my profession where I hear people who are just so clever with words, like just a mantra, a saying, like the Jim Quick thing. I mean, wow. And the glass balls versus plastic balls, which balls are plastic, right? That one for me was, I have said it so many times in the ensuing weeks, months, however long ago it was that I heard it, because the idea is you're juggling all these balls. They're up in the air. Which ones are glass? And if you drop it, it's going to break and shatter and bad things will happen, right?
Right.
Obviously, taking care of your person for whom you are in charge, of whom you are in charge, making sure they are fed, all of that stuff, right? Which balls are plastic? And the example that I did like to use was like store-bought pies, for example. Now, if in your family, your holiday gathering, everyone has always made great Aunt Gertrude's pecan pie, and it's like, it has to be this pie or it is not that holiday. Okay, well then that can be a glass ball for you. What else then can you find to be plastic? Whereas for me, that's not a thing. So like, maybe I'm going to get some store-bought pies.
Yeah. And I know we're, obviously I'm coming from a place of a work ERG, but I want to say on the glass ball thing. So Kimberly from HR on our call gave us a nice quote that plays into that from Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas by James Patterson. And it says, imagine life as a game in which you are juggling 5 balls. The balls are work, family, health, friends, and integrity. You're keeping all of them in the air, but one day you finally come to understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. The other 4 balls are made of glass. If you drop one of these, it will be irrevocably scuffed, nicked, or perhaps even shattered, right? And so when you're picking your balls, I love that framing of, and again, I know it's a place of, not everybody can just drop work. Yes. It's that old saying of like, if you leave work, they won't miss you. And if you leave your family, they'll be, damaged forever. And that's,
I've not heard that expression before. And
you can be easily replaced at work, right? But you're irreplaceable to your family. And, so it's one of those things like, yes, there are always going to be things that have to be done. Maybe you do have some glass balls at work, and that's okay. We literally started off talking about the season in which we're in, where everything is
Yes.
nuts and we got a
Yes.
lot of stuff we have to do. True
Yes.
musts all around. But then to your point about the glass and plastic, then okay, what else is optional? And how do
Yes.
we categorize the optional things in our lives so that everything doesn't feel like it has to be juggled?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is it too, is that self-talk and that, and it feels tedious, but I've even actually told people like, write it out. And journaling, I think, is a great thing anyway. So I do encourage, but like literally sit down and write things out and put, get your colored pencils, or if you're good at drawing, or put it on a list on the computer and make it in different fonts. I don't care, whatever, but literally list everything out and then go through and be like, okay, priority one, this is blue, right? And then this is a priority. This is if it happens, cool. And if not, no big deal. And then everywhere in between, so you really can get a realistic view. I think sometimes when it's nebulous and we don't know specifically like all of the things, it starts to feel overwhelming.
Oh,
Because
yes.
it's like it just all feels like too much in the whole sphere of it all. And so being able to like write it out, it's a very tangible thing of I'm going to do these things, I need to do that, whatever it might be, and can be very helpful to kind of, because the cure for overwhelm is nothingness, and there's not a lot of time for nothingness in this time. So if we can make it just stress and figure out where we can put our energies, that can be very helpful.
Yeah, and I mean for everything, so my in-laws are coming next. I travel next week, which is nuts. And then when I get back on Friday, my in-laws will be here. And then I am hosting 2 parties next weekend, one for my husband's graduation, one for my son's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we're just rolling straight from that into a week of holiday. And then there's Christmas, and then there's my son's actual birthday, and then Mustache Man Day. So they are actually going to a family Christmas this weekend without me, which does make me sad. But we were talking about how you have to give up some things to make others work. This is what we have to do. So I, have to sit down later today and say like musts, optionals would be nice. And
Uh-huh.
that's my like, what am I getting done? Presents have to be wrapped. Sheets have to be changed. The
Mm-hmm.
kitchen has to be stocked with some food, right? All of that has to be done before people visit my house. Do I
Yes.
have to reorganize the upstairs closet and the playroom to get rid of toys before we get more toys for his birthday? Would be nice, because we don't have any room right now, but
Yes.
probably not going to happen. And that's going to be okay, because who's going to get in that closet while they're here, right? It weighs on my mind,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a future Laura problem.
Yes, I love the way that you're able to conceptualize that for all of us, right? Like I have to feed people who live in my house. They have to have somewhere to
Unfortunately, they
sleep.
got to eat.
I mean, how did they? I have to, like I have to have bedclothes for them to be able to slumber, right? And yeah, and so yes, as much as I would love to be able to, enjoy the organization of it all, like things might have to get just kind of shoved to the side. It's like it's really your fault for having a baby in December, obviously.
It is my fault. I know. How dare I? It's really Sam's fault, but we'll come back to
Very
that later.
dare. Well, if anybody's curious, we do send our godson all of his birthday gifts on his half birthday, so we alleviate some of Laura's stress for her organization needs.
No, we're very, very blessed to have organizational problems. I totally understand that. So, we
Absolutely.
always with that grain of salt. But
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, just it feels like it all has to be done, but there's one of me and so much to be done. And so and your point about gatekeeping, there are lots of things I probably should and could and need to hand off, but it's
Mhm.
like I can get it done in 10 minutes.
Well, and that is definitely something there as well. And I was thinking about it too. I was thinking about kind of your wouldn't that be nice? And of course, you and I are massive sewists, cricketers.
My
And
table
I'm
of
yes,
cut
there everyone who's watching on the
pants
YouTube.
over here.
Here is her crafting space on the opposite side of her office, which I spend many a day looking at on Zoom calls, which I love. But yeah, it's like the wouldn't it be nice of it all? And it's like, but there are certain things, and I don't really have an answer for this, but it just popped to my mind. So I thought I'd talk about like, we like to do things because it makes us feel good too, right? And so it is kind of sitting with some of the tension of I'd like to get this done, and it's a wouldn't it be nice? And do I stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning doing this Cricut project? And sometimes we do. Sometimes we sacrifice sleep, and sometimes we don't. And I think our fear of negative emotions really, especially with our children, but even with ourselves, right? Like I just want to acknowledge, like it's hard for all of us, and it's okay for us to be disappointed. And as much as we can avoid everybody being disappointed is one thing, but sometimes things just aren't going to happen, and that is a bummer. And then it's going to be okay. You know, I've talked about a lot with my clients about like when they finally get to the space where they're okay putting the baby down and just kind of letting them cry for a minute. So heaven forbid they can go pee, or I need to switch this laundry over. Well, the baby's going to cry. And you know what? Like, but getting that to that space, and some people, it's a spectrum of time. Some people immediately are like, oh, it's baby, don't cry, I'll be fine, I'll see you in 2 minutes. And some people, that's a really long journey. And so the baby's going to cry. That's okay. The cricket's not going to get done. That's okay. I don't know.
Right.
Sorry for my tangent, but I just was like, yeah.
You used a term that I felt very seen with on our presentation, some sort of insomnia, but it was where you were giving up time from when you know you should be sleeping to get things done because they are important to you. And yeah, that is our Wednesday night crafting binges for sure.
Sleep, revenge, procrastination.
There it is. That's like, if you could put a tag on my life.
Yes.
But, you know, it's funny, we talked about that, but at the beginning we talked about modeling behavior. So obviously maybe I don't want to model for my child that staying up until 1 to get on the cricket is the best thing, but finding activities that unburden your soul is a good thing. You know, finding something that makes your heart happy, that makes you feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
It's our family fulfills us, of course, our jobs fulfill us, at least to a degree, and
Sure.
all of that, and the things that we take on, our extracurriculars fulfill us, or we hopefully wouldn't do them. But there's a different fulfillment that comes from doing something that's like just for you. Even if it's to make clothes that our children are going to wear, because seeing them wear them later makes me happy.
Yes.
It doesn't, nobody else is benefiting from me being up until 1 except for the new pair of pants that he gets.
Yes.
But it makes me happy, right?
Yes.
And there's a need that refills my cup.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you for kind of summing that up for me, because I was like, I'm not really sure what I want to say about it, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. And yes, and the sleep revenge procrastination is such a real thing, because I tell you, and especially this week, the full moon, I very much believe in a full moon and its powers. We are made of what, 80% water in our body, and the moon is what impacts tides. How does it not impact us? These children have come home and they have been fussy McFussersons. I thought about you because I know about your yesterday morning.
Yes.
My morning this morning. My son is literally in a gaslighting phase. No joke. I'm not misappropriating the word. I genuinely know what it means.
And they learn it early.
They sure do. He's the example this morning, if everyone doesn't mind a quick tangent, but the example this morning was, I would like blueberry oatmeal. Great. He said it at least 4 times. And then all of a sudden, full meltdown. I wanted strawberry. Sir, no, you did not. And then we had the full, right. So it's tough because you see your kids in the morning, then you have that mom guilt of taking them to school anyway, because how dare you not raise them all by yourself entirely. And then they come home and they're just little poop heads, sometimes acting like poop heads. They are not acting like that. And then it's like, how do you, and some people, especially, I mean, I don't know how people do it who have even later bedtimes, or if they co-sleep, then you never get that time to yourself. So for me, absolutely, there are days where I'm like, I need more me time. I need
a reset. My brain needs it.
Yeah. And so, and then also to the detriment of being up till 1 o'clock in the morning and being up at 6:30, and we balance it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're not quite to gaslighting, but my son is definitely in the gives his leftover waffle to the dog and then cries because the dog took his waffle. Like, that's where we are. So we're like, we're working our way up. We're not talkative enough for gaslighting, but oh Lord, it's coming.
Yes. And then my daughter, the almost 18-month-old, is fully skipping I don't know what we call them now. You're not supposed to say terrible twos. The person is not terrible. It's a rough period. Whatever the twos are that we're calling it now, she is straight into 3-nager. No, I mean, the hand, no, the head goes, y'all go, if you're listening, go watch this part on YouTube. No, just the energy. And I love them both so much. And I just want to validate too, like, sometimes it's hard and that's okay. And that's why we have church and text threads. And
it can be magical and incredibly trying at the same time. Those aren't mutually exclusive.
They are absolutely not. Yes.
You still watch them throw their little tantrum and you're like, my goodness, this child is verbal. How cool is that? Wish you wasn't screaming at me right now. Wish you learned some words that weren't so mean right now, but you know, it's still cool. They're still, you remember when they were this big and now they're big enough to make you want to cry, but it's it's sweet. But it's not sweet 100% of the time. And
no, it's not. And I the more we can validate that you can love your children and want to work and be okay. Like I always tell them when I pick them up, like, I missed you all day. And like, and I do. And also, thank goodness my kid went back to school today. Like it's all the things
Totally.
that's okay.
I'm going to make that reel work that I tried to send you this morning, and you can share it out if you want to. It's great. Somebody posted it on their Facebook, but it was basically about like, stop asking working moms if they're okay. We're never okay. We're basically in fight or flight mode 98% of the time.
Yeah.
And, it's like you carried this little person with you for 9 to 10 months, and you basically split your soul. They're Horcruxes.
Yes.
They have our soul attached to them, and you get to stay home for a couple of weeks, up to 12, maybe 14, depending on how you had your baby and what your company looks like. And then you hand them off to someone else, and you get to spend maybe 4 hours a day with them. And sometimes those 4 hours a day, to your point, are incredibly challenging. But then there's the guilt of, I only get 4 hours a day, and this other person is basically raising my child if they're in daycare, or maybe it's a grandparent, or maybe you have a stay-at-home partner, but you get a little envious of that time that you're not getting to spend with them. If you're, and she goes into like, how, like, why is it such an antiquated system that we work 8 to 5 anyway, when most of us could probably get our job done in like 3 hours, because especially when you become a parent, you're so efficient, right?
Yes.
So just that, like, stop asking working moms if we're okay, because we're not. We're always planning something, making a packing list, thinking about what we need to do to clean, missing our children. Maybe you're not missing your kid. Maybe you're happy to be away, but you're still thinking about what it's going to be like, or what you need to do this weekend, or what presents you still have left to buy for the holidays, or wrap, or this or that, or where you got to go. There's always something. There's always more on our plate than just, well, I'm sitting here at my desk and so needs this report, so I guess I'll bang that out and go home.
It's like the tickering of it all.
Yeah.
Right.
So, full circle. It's just this time of year, it's really compounded. So I think these conversations are incredibly important, even if it's just, we get on in our ERGA. So more than our quarterly events, we just get on Zoom. We're like, who needs a Zoom today? And we pop on, and anybody that's on, and we just, I want to say complain, because it's more therapeutic than that. But to feel like you're not the only person dealing with something can be very cathartic.
Yes, because I think, and that's why I think communication is so important. I mean, that's been kind of the theme, a lot of this too, is communicating with bosses and family, but also to be able to express, like, when we isolate ourselves because we feel ashamed, that how dare we not be more grateful for the children we have, or whatever what we're doing, it really is dangerous for our mental well-being, because our emotional state, because we're not alone. It's not just you. And it can really feel that way sometimes, of like, I'm doing it wrong. This is a very specific situation to me. And I'm like, not to discredit your you as a person, but no, you are not alone. This is not a special thing to you. A lot of us are going through it. And I'm glad to hear. I love to hear that that's happening with your ERG. And I hope that people who are listening are able to, like, find that village, create it somehow. Easier said than done. I know we make the jokes about, like, how do you make friends in your 30s, but like, maybe going back in and trying to find ways, well, not that everyone who's listening is 30, but you know what I'm saying? But finding old connections and maybe trying to rekindle those, or just finding ways to feel supported is very helpful. Absolutely. Yeah. I did want to go back, because we skipped over it because I went off, but I don't care. I'm loving where we're going. I loved that you all talked about something like taking something off your plate. So especially if you're in charge of hosting something or whatever it might be. And we had this great slide that talks about, and obviously specific to your industry, but other people who have an EAP and an employee assistance program, they actually, a lot of them have guidance resources. Like, people can help you with budgeting. You can get discounts at major retailers. I actually used to work at Morgan Stanley, and we had a great program. I still get emails from it, where just for being an employee there, you get 10% off here and 20% off there and whatever. So making sure that you're asking whoever your employer is, like, obviously I work for myself and I don't offer those benefits, but if you do work somewhere, that helping with travel plans, helping with catering, large event planning, obviously virtual therapy is a big one. If you have insurance and an EAP, you are entitled to therapy. I would encourage everybody, get you some therapy.
It's never bad to do a little car maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. One of the biggest things that your group wanted to talk about was finances.
Yes.
And not surprising, obviously, everyone feels compelled to purchase gifts that help create the magic, that help, blah, 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 right? And how do we focus on spending in a way that feels appropriate to us, right? What's driving your purchases is the biggest thing there.
So let's use our Mustache Man Day as an example, right? So we talked about we talk a little bit about traditions and maintaining the magic, but there's also, we're talking about communication, and it's not just with your workplace, it's with your friends and family too. So you know, we started Mustache Man Day when our group had 2 children. And you know, 4 couples, there was 8 adults and 2 children, and we did kind of, you know, gifts for the families and whatever. And I mean, very quickly through COVID, it snowballed, and now we have 8 children.
Yes.
7, a lot of children. Yes. So we had to raise our hands and say, look, Secret Santa, right? Yeah. Because it became very, you know, not prohibitive. We love our friends, and it's not about not buying things for each other's kids, but like, you can kind of see where this is going. And as they get older, they're not going to be as happy with like a $5 toy. So how about we set a limit, let the kids start picking stuff out. They're getting older. It's fun for them. Let's get them involved. Let's morph the tradition to meet us where we are, and not feel like we have to keep doing this grand thing because it's our family tradition. Well, that's great. Let's communicate, figure out where we are now and what's going to make the most sense, and unburden ourselves from some of that expectation, which when we threw it out there, I mean, everybody was more than happy to be like, oh my God, yes, please. That would be so delightful. Like, reduce the number of things they have to buy, increase the quality of what everybody's getting. We'll stop buying for the adults and do a little gift or a game exchange. Like games on New Year's Eve. And it gives us, you know, it's more of where we are currently. And in a few years, you know, it might change again, but being able to just say, hey, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Let's try to change this so that we can reduce what's on our plate.
Absolutely. I love that is a really good way of describing that, because it can start to all the goal is to stop the overwhelm, right? Like we can be stressed. Some of it can be good stress. And also, this is manageable. One of the things that we talked about was using what you have, like being intentional about what your purchases are, being intentional about having those conversations. I love to use what you have, because you work in wine. My husband works in wine. And I know a lot of times the expectations, although I wanted to say too, removing the sense of the expectation, like when you come to my house, please don't bring anything, right? And then how do we set that expectation for the group, for the friends, whatever it might be? Or if you have somewhere you do have to bring something, like, you don't feel like you have to go out and buy a bottle of wine when you have bottles of wine at the house. Is obviously a very specific example to people in your industry, but also it's not, though. Sometimes people just have bottles of wine. And what are some things that you have around the house? Or could you maybe set yourself up? Your gift closet is a really good example where you can populate that throughout the year. And then it's like, oh, I have this ready, which you can say more about your gift closet, obviously.
I pulled something out of it yesterday. Yeah, no, I mean, and that makes it sound like I have a Monica closet. It's not glamorous. I just have a closet and it looks like the one in Friends where Richard is hiding. Yes. So no, but if we find something on clearance or random trinket throughout a gear, or something that somebody gives you that you don't want, goes into the gift closet. And it's just a couple of shelves and an extra closet that we have. And so if we get invited last minute to a school friend birthday party, or a random white elephant gift exchange, or, you know, you've got something for somebody, but you feel like you need to throw a little something into it. It's just nice. We talked about this on the call. If somebody shows up to your house with a gift and you weren't expecting it, then like, oh, hang on, let me just run upstairs, you know, candles and stuff. Just, like I said, we buy toys, or not gonna lie, if my son gets a duplicate of something and I don't know how to return it, I mean, gift closet. Yeah. So, you know, just basically giving yourself a little bit of an extra cushion just in case something last minute comes up. To your point, I love to reduce the expectation. Please, if I invite you to my house for a dinner and don't ask you to bring something, please don't feel obligated. I mean, a bottle of wine is always fine, but like, people, you know, you don't have to show up with a homemade something. We're not trying to create more expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Gonna say something. Oh, and there are one of the things that we try to put on our thing, which I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but you know, there are apps. It's not sponsored, but I found one called Super Cook, where you can go in, and if somebody shows up to your house last minute, you can be like, these are the things that I have in my pantry and my refrigerator, and it will tell you a recipe you can make with it. So it's another way to unburden yourself, so that you don't have to feel like you have to constantly have things made in case somebody shows up.
Yes, that's a good, and they are not a sponsor of this podcast, Super Cook. I wrote it down though, because
maybe you should be. No,
I was going to say, don't see me next week shooting out some DMs though. We'll see.
I think it's neat that there's stuff like that out there. It's like, please help me. I have 1 can of soup and some turkey. What do I do?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I was really excited to talk about was gatherings and like, what is your exit strategy?
Yes, I was going to say we'd be remiss to not mention the non sequiturs.
Yes. Oh, we are. Oh, we are going there right now. So the quote that we had was "Disappointment is unmet expectations" by Brene Brown, because you know how much we love Brene Brown, and talking about like how difficult it can be, the anticipatory anxiety that comes with holidays, is it some e-cards? I think that's how you some e-cards.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I call it anyway.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you just Google some SOME e-cards. And you'll know exactly what we're talking about because you've seen these before. And it said the image Laura found was, let's have a family gathering for the remaining family members who still speak to each other. And I know some of you might chuckle and some of you are raising your both hands like, yep, that's my family. And so it's figuring out what are some things that you can do to set yourself up for success when you know that there is tension or tenuous relationships. And you know, what is your exit strategy? Drive yourself there. You have a car. Have your Uber app open if that's not an option, or if you know, what is your escape plan? Finding ways to do mini breaks was one of the good ones that we talked about as well. Like, oh, we ran out of turkey dressing. Who can run to the store? Me, I'll go.
You know, I was thinking about this after the fact, but you could treat it like a first date and have a code word with a friend where if I text you, you know, baloney, I need you to call me and pretend like there's an emergency because I got to get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's on making sure that you're honoring your personal boundaries is so important. Like, you don't want to be disrespectful. You don't want to be rude and be like, okay, I hate this, I'm leaving. And also, what are some things that you can do in a way like that? I like the code word idea too. So we talked about being the champion of the non sequitur, which there are a number of ways to do, but one of them that we talked about was, maybe I'm not your target audience for this conversation. And that's a big one because I don't know what it is about family holidays that make people want to talk about politics and the state of the world, but it does.
I really want to use some personal examples right now from literally this past Thanksgiving, but I won't put any of my family members on blast. Just suffice it to say that happened.
Yes. Yes. Right? It's so tough sometimes in this space. I'm like, I have the best stories, but also it's like, well, it's not really appropriate to just like put out in the world. But
right.
Suffice to say that we all feel that way at certain times in certain situations. I don't know if anybody watched the Dave Chappelle Saturday Night Live, but he talked about like, it's one thing to think something, which maybe you shouldn't also think that thing, but that's another story for another day. But it's another thing entirely to say it out loud. And so hopefully people can kind of take a moment and reflect, like, is this the venue for that conversation? Yeah. And then
the other side of that, because I doubt anybody that's listening is going to be the instigator of this conversation. Let's just give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But the other side of that is, you know, I'll just, without again putting anybody on blast, or somebody at our event this year that was like trying actively to pick fights with people. And you know, nobody engaged, because it's the other side of the coin, right? Like, if I give them what they're looking for, how is this going to turn out? So I took your advice. We became the subject changers. We would look for like some common word or something, you know, it's almost like a word association game. We're like, oh, you said that. Well, that makes me think of this. And we just go on to another topic.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, and it, you know, we love a game, so it was great.
Yeah.
But so it just, if you don't feel like a non sequitur is going to be received well, maybe it's just like, oh, I just heard you say the word blue. Have you seen the new blue? Blah, 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 blah. Or have you done whatever, you know, just
yes,
fully changing the conversation in a different direction, because sometimes engaging is just not only going to make it worse, but going to give them exactly what they wanted.
That's exactly right. Yeah. My mom's favorite, this has been decades. I can't remember when she didn't say, she'd be like, how about them Cowboys? Obviously now is at least football season and the Cowboys are doing quite well, but even if it's March, she'll still say it. And it's so funny because it's like, so that's the cue that we're moving on from this topic. And
right.
Yeah. And then the one that you came up with, which was so perfect for us, was Ross when Rachel first meets Phoebe.
I think the word you're looking for is anyway.
Yes. Absolutely. And so it's figuring out a way, again, as politely as you can. And also sometimes just honoring your own personal boundaries and saying, I'm not going to discuss that, and kind of move from there. The next thing that we talked about was grief at holiday time, which is very difficult. Obviously, everyone knows my grandpa passed away 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And it was interesting because I was like, what a terrible time. It's Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas, then it's his birthday, boom, boom, boom. And my husband was like, that's probably a good thing, because think about how many people are going to be around your grandma so
That's true.
quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a very good point. And luckily
Good reframing.
my entire family lives 20 minutes from each other. So it also, but still, besides us, obviously, but yeah. And even if your grandfather didn't die 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, anniversaries are very difficult. If somebody had passed away within the year, it can be 20 years later, and you still don't need to be over it. Air quotes. Oh, that drives me crazy when someone's like,
Oh yeah.
upset about it. Like, yeah, I am. And recognize giving yourself space to process those feelings, and recognizing that it is okay. There is no time limit for grief, and that holidays are re-triggering. There's, here I am again at another Christmas where that person is not there. And being willing to talk about it. Sometimes you being the one to bring it up can be the person, kind of gives other people permission to express that they're not okay either.
Absolutely. Yeah. It all comes back to communication, right? Things can feel taboo to people until you almost like give them permission to discuss them, right? So just that openness, if you're ready, creating that, like, let's share some memories. Let's, let's put the topic on the table. If everybody's going to feel better if we actually talk about it. My grandmother died December 7th, several years ago. So we had just gotten, her birthday was in November. Then we had Thanksgiving. She was in hospice at that point, and then she passed, and we rolled right into Christmas, and all the gifts had already been bought and all of that. So it was just a really emotional season. And so unfortunately, December 7th is also my stepdad's birthday. We have a really bad track record with deaths on birthdays in my family. So topic for another day. But yeah, so it does create kind of, you want to talk about it, but it's supposed to be a happy time. And then your phrase that you love that came from one of your mentors, don't should on yourself. Don't tell yourself like, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be happy. I should not feel so lonely or feel so much grief or feel whatever, because look at all the light and the things. And again, like, you're trying to make magic for everybody else. So you just shut down your own emotions, and that just makes it even feel lonelier.
Absolutely. Don't shit on yourself. Somebody put that on a tattoo somewhere as well, right? So I know we're starting to run short of time because we both have a hard out, but I did want to just briefly touch. I just honestly just wanted to say about seasonal affective disorder. You may not be diagnosable, but it is difficult for a lot of people. It's funny, yesterday, my son was asking when I picked him up from school about the rain, and I was like, yeah, I don't really enjoy when it's raining. He goes, I like the dark. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, hey, the Christina Yang of it all. Like, I can't live in LA. It's too sunny.
Yeah.
Right. I knew you'd get that reference. One of the 2 seasons of that show I watched, but that always stuck with me, of like, there are people who enjoy a shorter, more dark, more dreary. Well, I'll use the word dreary. It's not dreary for them. Weather. And so, but it's interesting because, our bodies are naturally meant to like hibernate and relax during this time. And yet productivity, especially in certain industries, is expected at an all-time high. And so we are trying to figure out a way to navigate things that can help you to get through the season, the changing of the season, and the less cheerful weather for some of us, in healthy ways. Obviously, the number one thing there being therapy, but just recognizing again and giving yourself grace. Like, we're supposed to be hibernating.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I'll out myself. I have seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
So that is a real challenge for me, basically from the time that we move, with daylight savings till January or later. It's just, it's very, sometimes it can be difficult to get motivated. Sometimes it can be difficult to get happy, for lack of a better term, even though I think happy is subjective. But one of the things that makes me feel better, one is my beautiful, again, non-sponsored Joy tea. It's my very favorite. And it's only around this time of the season, so it gives me something to look forward to. And another is the light of a Christmas tree. There is nothing like the very specific light, no matter if it's the multicolored lights or the incandescents or what. There's something so specific about the darkness of this time of year, and how early and how late it's dark. It's just so much darkness, and the sun is different. And with your home being illuminated, even if you don't observe Christmas, there's just something about the specific, it's like there's no lamp that can replicate it that I found.
Yeah.
And so for me, that means I put my tree up early, and I
Yes.
leave my tree up at least until the middle of January, because it is something that I know is going to make, if I take my tea and sit by the fire in the light of my tree, it's a warmth for me that really helps me cope. And so,
Mhm.
you need to find things that make you feel just a little bit lifted.
Absolutely. I like that, lifted. I like that. The other thing that we talked about were the big four of eating, hydrating, sleep, and movement. And I like to use the word movement very loosely. I think for me, it's exercise. And my son had a dentist appointment this morning, so he was home and he came downstairs and was like, he wanted a string cheese, but he was like, "What are you doing?" He was enamored by Cody Rigsby and Celine Dion. But
You
yeah,
wouldn't
and
be.
so who wouldn't be? But finding a way of movement, that's another thing about taking those breaks in your gatherings as well, is just getting up, stretching the legs. If it's warm or nice outside, or you can bundle up and go outside to even take a walk around the house, walk down the street if you're living in the city, or getting that heart rate up can be very helpful. I do want to talk about action before motivation. Sometimes you are not going to feel like getting your feet on the floor. And when working with people with depression, we talk about action before motivation. It's tough because you're not feeling motivated, but if you can, and I can go on a whole spiel about activity planning and making sure you're intentional about, like, today at noon, I'm going to take a 20-minute walk, and then, but very specific and time oriented. But eating is a tough one for a lot of us, a lot of new parents, especially. Drinking water, hydrating, not just wine. Wine is
Tough some
not
days.
very hydrating. And then, of course, sleep. Again, we already talked about sleep, revenge, procrastination, all of that, but being intentional about trying to do the best that you can with those things. So, gosh, we have so many other things that we could
I
talk about.
know.
I
Just go
know,
on
but
and on.
but I feel like with having done the first part by myself, and then now I think we've got it generally, easier said than done. My Thanksgiving was very stressful, and I actually, if I may, I remember, I won't say too much obviously, but I just remembered being in Thanksgiving and being like, I just did a presentation about how to survive the holidays, and I'm so stressed right now. And of course, obviously, Laura was very gracious and was like, yes, but we're all doing the best we can, and not everything is in our control, and it is what it is. And yeah,
We say
so
it is what it is a lot, because you know what? It is.
we're living life on life's terms.
That's right.
That's the expression I like to use. And life's terms sometimes are stressful people, stressful situations, and then also trying to find the joy where we can, and trying to be, um, intentional. There's that word
I love
about,
that word. Yes.
yes, intentional. So Laura, where, I know you are not the social media queen,
No.
what unless anybody wants to follow her on Reddit, she can show you some really good Reddit stuff. But
Yeah.
what causes, what charities, what are some things that you would like to promote here at the end?
Okay, well, you know that my hands down go-to charity, and where I do everybody please shop smile.amazon.com this holiday season. And also don't forget to thank your Amazon drivers. If you tell your Alexa, I can't say her name out loud because we both have them and they'll go off, but
Yes.
if you tell your devices to thank your driver, it'll donate $5 at no cost to you, just a little extra something for them. And please shop through Smile and pick a charity of your choice so that all of your purchases give a kickback to that group. MySmile.com charity is the Trevor Project. It's an amazing organization that supports LGBTQ plus youth, because we're trying to lower suicide rates and things like that, and depression amongst that particular group of people, and just find ways to support and encourage everyone, right? And so there you can find them on Instagram at Trevor Project, not but at Trevor Project, and it's a wonderful organization. My husband's Amazon Smile, which is also an amazing cause, is Sesame Workshop. So it's the nonprofit behind Sesame Street and a lot of the wonderful things that they do. And that's another very outgoing, outreach oriented organization that does an incredible amount of charity for a vast array of causes at neighborhoods and groups. And so it's amazing. And you can find them on Instagram at Sesame Workshop. Be sure to do Sesame Workshop and not Sesame like Foundation or anything, because there's a whole bunch of like architecture firms called Sesame for some reason. So Sesame
I did not know that.
Workshop. I found out when I was trying to find the Instagram, because you know I'm really bad at Instagram. So today I learned. And one that is a little lesser known that I'd like to plug because it was actually started by a former classmate of mine at OU. So there is a group, and I have not found them on Instagram, but that doesn't mean that they're not out there because I'm bad at it. But I will give you their Facebook link. I'll
Yes.
text it to you after this.
Great.
It's called Fairy Godmothers.
Oh,
So
wow.
what it is, so Nikki unfortunately lost her husband a few years ago. And in her first holiday season without her husband, she realized that it's incredibly difficult, not only for the widow or the widower, but also for the children on Christmas morning or as you're opening Hanukkah presents or whatever it might be, when mom or dad, the widow or the widower, doesn't have anything to open. You know, obviously it's a reminder that you don't have anybody there to get you something, which is another reminder of your loss. But it's also, it was mostly, she said, difficult for her kids to realize that
No one took care of
kids were
mom.
like 5 and 7, you know, or younger. So they didn't, you know, they probably made her stuff from school, which is wonderful, but like they're opening presents and mom doesn't have anything. It's just another reminder. So she started this organization where you can sign up to be a fairy godmother, and they have Cinderellas or Cinderfellas that register. And so you can sign up to get some gifts and wrap them for a widow or a widower so that they have something to open, especially on their first holiday season or subsequent seasons with young children, just so that it's not just another reminder of the difficulties. So I will send you the Facebook link. I think it's incredible. They've it started here in North Texas. There's some additional chapters now. Last year, I think she wanted to have 100 families, and I think this year she's up to 1,000. So it's pretty incredible how it's grown. But
Amazing.
obviously it's one we partake in, and I think it's a pretty lovely cause, especially specifically for my scope, as you know, we're talking about caregivers and families and the holidays. It really ties right in. So
Yes.
like I said, I'll send you that. I think it's really neat and one that people are not as aware of. So
Absolutely not. So that's so wonderful. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. I am going to insist, and I know also our girlfriend Jessica, we had back in March, we went to New York and we were like, we're going to record a podcast together. And that did not happen. So I will
probably for the best while we were in New York.
Yeah, well, it was right to have not done so. We'll leave it there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we didn't just gab too much and everybody found some value in what we talked about.
I'm optimistic that they did. Yeah, thank you so much. And I will be sure to have you back. I appreciate you very much. Everybody out there, be curious, not judgmental, and I will see y'all next time.